The impossible photograph. The hum of the ventilation system was the loudest sound in the entire photo interpretation lab, a constant, low thrum beneath the frantic scribbling of pencils and the hushed whispers of analysts. Major Anya Petrova, her brow furrowed in concentration, leaned closer to the light table, the magnifying glass a weighty extension of her hand. The image before her, an aerial photograph taken by an American U-2 over Soviet airspace, was impossible. Again, Arkady, are you certain this is from yesterday's flight? She asked, her voice barely a murmur. Arkady Volkov, a junior analyst with a perpetually worried expression, nodded vigorously. Absolutely, Major. Scanned directly from the film canister, Flight 602, August 14th. He pointed to the metadata strip along the edge. Even checked the sensor logs. Heavy cloud cover reported across the entire target area. Stratocumulus, 90% obscuration, base at 3,000 meters. Anya tapped the photograph with her fingernail. Then how? Arkady, do we have a clear image of the missile silo complex at Plesetsk? Every single launch bay, every access road, perfectly defined. The shadows even indicate mid-afternoon sun. She looked up, her gaze sweeping across the other analysts, all equally baffled. Through solid cloud cover? Colonel Viktor Orlov, the lab's director, a man usually unflappable, stood hunched over a different section of the same photo. His fingers traced the outline of a suspected underground bunker. They're not using conventional radar, that much is clear, he muttered, more to himself than to Anya. The resolution is far too fine. And thermal? No, the heat signatures wouldn't penetrate this uniformly. It's like they were flying under a clear sky. Anya felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. This wasn't just an intelligence breakthrough for the Americans. It was a fundamental challenge to their understanding of aerial reconnaissance. If the U.S. could see through their defenses with such clarity, their entire strategic advantage was compromised. She walked over to Orlov. Colonel, have you considered a new type of lens? Something that filters out water vapor. Orlov scoffed, a dry, humorless sound. Filtering water vapor to this degree would require a lens the size of a small car, Major. And even then, the physics, it defies everything we know about light transmission through atmospheric conditions. He straightened up, his eyes meeting hers. This photograph is a ghost, Anya. It shouldn't exist. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second amplifying the tension. Other analysts were now muttering theories, some bordering on the fantastical, advanced spectral analysis, exotic particle beams, even whispers of alien technology. Anya dismissed the wilder ideas, focusing on the cold, hard facts of the image before her. The details were too precise, too real. This wasn't a trick of light or a misinterpretation. Send this directly to General Volkov, Colonel, Anya instructed, her voice firm, cutting through the growing chatter. Immediately. And prepare a full report on the meteorological conditions during the flight. I want every single data point, every observation. If we can't explain how they took it, we need to understand what they saw and when. Orlov nodded, already moving towards the secure communication line. Anya returned to the light table, her fingers tracing the faint, almost imperceptible lines of a service vehicle near one of the silos. The sun glinted off its roof, a sun that should have been obscured by thousands of feet of dense cloud. The impossible photograph stared back, an unnerving testament to an unknown adversary capability and a silent promise of sleepless nights to come. The cloud piercer's birth. The air in the hangar was thick with the scent of ozone and something akin to burnt sugar. Dr. Eris Thorne, his brow perpetually furrowed, adjusted his spectacles, the fluorescent lights glinting off the lenses. Beside him, Colonel Petrov, his usual stoicism a little frayed at the edges, watched the final connections being made to the monstrous apparatus at the center of the room. This was it. Years of clandestine work, countless sleepless nights, all culminating in this moment. Are we certain, Doctor, that the power conduit will hold? Petrov's voice was a low rumble, barely audible above the hum of the cooling systems. The last simulation showed a significant strain. Thorne offered a tight, almost imperceptible smile. Colonel, if I wasn't certain, we wouldn't be here. The modifications to the power coupling were arduous, but effective. This isn't a mere camera, you understand. It's a complete recalibration of light itself. The camera was a misnomer. What sat on the reinforced platform was a colossal cylinder of polished chrome steel, riddled with intricate lenses and shimmering coils. It pulsed with a faint, internal blue light that seemed to draw the very air into its core. Technicians in sterile white suits darted around its base, their movements precise and practiced, like surgeons around an operating table. A sharp clang echoed through the hangar as the final access panel was secured. The blue glow intensified, bathing the room in an ethereal, shifting light. On a raised control console, a young engineer, barely out of university, announced, "Power conduit stable. Initiating primary optical alignment sequence." His voice cracked slightly with the nervous energy that permeated the space. Petrov walked over to the console, his eyes fixed on the array of readouts. "And the image processing? We need clarity, Thorne. Not just a blurred suggestion of what lies beneath the overcast. Clarity will be absolute, Colonel," Thorne promised, his voice now imbued with a quiet pride. "The cloud piercer, as I've affectionately named it, doesn't just see through the clouds. It reconstructs the light that has been scattered, distorted. It will render the unseen, seen." He gestured towards a large, reinforced window that looked out onto a test range, currently shrouded in an artificial, dense fog. "Prepare for activation." A low thrum vibrated through the concrete floor, growing steadily in intensity. The blue light within the cloud piercer flared, then stabilized into a brilliant, steady beacon. On the main monitor, the swirling, opaque image of the fog-bound test range began to shimmer, then resolve. Slowly, impossibly, the faint outline of a target dummy, placed deliberately amidst the simulated cloud cover, materialized. Then, its features sharpened, its painted uniform clearly visible. It was as if the fog had simply ceased to exist for the camera's gaze. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Petrov stared, his hardened features slack with genuine astonishment. "My God," he whispered, the words barely escaping his lips. "It actually works. The cloud piercer had been born. Sky Ghost takes flight." The wind, a frigid, insistent presence, worried the worn leather of Pavel's jacket. Below them, the airfield sprawled, a mosaic of impenetrable shadows and sharp, artificial illumination. The Sky Ghost, a sleek, silent hunter, was poised against the pre-dawn gloom, its polished fuselage mirroring the dim gleam of the hangar lights like a slumbering behemoth. Arcady's gloved hand caressed an experimental wingtip. A faint thrum of anticipation permeated the air. "Ready, Pavel?" His voice, a low current, was barely audible above the distant whine of ground crew machinery. He didn't wait for a reply, already striding towards the cockpit. Pavel followed, a knot of adrenaline tightening in his gut. This was it, the culmination of months, even years, of clandestine effort. Inside the cramped cockpit, the familiar tang of ozone and hydraulic fluid offered a strange solace. Pavel settled into the pilot's seat, his fingers automatically tracing the cool metal of the joystick. He ran through the pre-flight checks, each switch and dial a well-rehearsed liturgy. Arkady, secured in the observer's seat beside him, was already fine-tuning the sensor array, his gaze locked on the holographic display that shimmered to life. "Weather holding, Arkady?" Pavel's voice remained steady despite the rapid drumming of his heart. "Cloud cover at 10,000 meters, dense and uniform, precisely as forecast." Arkady responded, a hint of triumph in his tone. "Ideal conditions for a test flight, and for showcasing our unique capabilities." The Sky Ghost glided onto the runway, its landing gear a hushed murmur against the tarmac. The ground crew, a huddle of bundled figures, watched with bated breath. Pavel nudged the throttle forward, and the experimental engines, a marvel of contained power, roared to life. The plane vibrated, a deep, resonant hum that resonated through Pavel's very core. As they gathered speed, the runway lights blurred into streaks of amber and white. With an almost ethereal grace, the Sky Ghost ascended, climbing into the steel-gray expanse of the sky. Pavel angled the craft towards the predicted cloud bank, a vast, undulating ceiling promising to conceal their every move. Approaching optimal altitude, Arkady announced, his eyes never straying from the sensor display. Engaging atmospheric imaging. Let's observe the world through this particular veil. A shiver of excitement, cold and electric, traced Pavel's spine. Below them, the landscape was already dissolving, swallowed by the encroaching mists. He gripped the controls, the fate of a groundbreaking mission, and perhaps the very nature of aerial reconnaissance, resting in his hands. A silent phantom, the sky ghost ascended into the heart of the storm. Moscow's fury. The blizzard raged, a tempest of icy fury that clawed at Moscow and bit through Lieutenant General Anatoly Volkov's thick wool coat. Visibility had dwindled to mere meters, a whiteout that muffled the city's usual roar into a primal shriek of wind. He hunched deeper into his collar, his breath pluming in the frigid air as he hurried towards the fortified entrance of the Lubyanka. Chairman Kryukov's unexpected summons had been terse, its brevity chilling. The Americans' cloud-piercing images, he declared, they've seen something. Something they shouldn't. Inside, the air felt warm, heavy with the scent of stale cigarette smoke and the faint tang of ozone. Volkov's boots struck a rhythmic echo on the polished linoleum, guiding him through the labyrinthine corridors. Guards stationed outside Kryukov's antechamber snapped to attention, their faces etched with grim resolve. The atmosphere crackled with tension, a tight spring poised to unleash its force. Chairman Kryukov paced restlessly when Volkov entered, his usually impassive features now a mask barely concealing his rage. Colonel Yuri Orlov stood rigidly by the holographic projector, a sheen of perspiration on his brow despite the room's cool temperature. The projector hummed softly, casting a satellite image onto the display, a remote test site deep within the Siberian taiga. The image, though grainy, clearly delineated the unique delta wings of 3 large, experimental aircraft. They saw it. Kryukov rasped, his voice a dangerous whisper. Through a meter of cloud cover, through the worst blizzard in a decade, they saw it. He slammed a fist onto his desk, the heavy thud rattling delicate teacups. The Americans. They know about Project Stormbreaker. Orlov cleared his throat, his gaze unwavering from the projection. We've analyzed all telemetry, Chairman. No radar penetration, no conventional optical signature. It's as if their sensors perceived through the very fabric of the weather. Volkov moved closer, his mind racing. He knew the Americans were developing advanced reconnaissance, but this transcended anything their intelligence reports had hinted at. What are the implications, Chairman? He asked, his voice steady despite the seismic shift in his understanding. Kryukov spun to face him, his eyes blazing. Implications? The implications are that our most advanced stealth project, our strategic counter to their ICBMs, is compromised before it even takes flight. This is a direct affront to Soviet sovereignty, Anatoly. They are openly mocking us. He gestured wildly at the image. They are broadcasting their capability to see anything, anywhere, anytime. Our secrets stand utterly exposed. A chilling realization settled over Volkov. This wasn't merely about a spy plane. It was about the psychological warfare woven into its very existence. They want us to know they can do it, he murmured. Precisely, Kryukov roared. And we must respond. Not merely to the machine, but to the message it carries. Orlov, initiate full lockdown of all flight research facilities. Double security. Volkov, you will lead the counterintelligence investigation. Uncover how they achieve this. Find the chinks in their armor and exploit them ruthlessly. This is not simply a breach of security, Anatoly. This is a clear declaration of war, and Moscow's fury will be their answer. Volkov met Kryukov's gaze, a grim determination hardening his own eyes. The stakes had just escalated dramatically. The battle for supremacy in the skies was no longer just technological. It was a desperate hunt for an unseen enemy, for a technology that defied all explanation. The hunt for the impossible. The scent of stale coffee and ozone clung to the war room as Major Anya Petrova traced a gloved finger over the holographic projection of the American spy plane's flight path. General Volkov, his face a roadmap of worry lines, stood beside her, his breath fogging slightly in the chilled air. The photographic evidence is undeniable, Major. Through a full cloud layer. No known technology can achieve this. It's impossible. Anya nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on the shimmering image. Impossible is merely a word until someone finds a way around it. General. She zoomed in on a section of the flight path, a jagged line over the Barents Sea. Their reconnaissance flights have become bolder, more frequent, and now this. We need to understand how they did it, and then we need to stop them. Our intercepts have yielded nothing new, Volkov grumbled. No unusual energy signatures, no strange atmospheric disturbances reported by our patrols. It's as if the planes simply saw through the sky. The next few days blurred into an exhausting cycle of failed experiments and dead ends. Anya's team, a collection of brilliant but increasingly frustrated scientists and engineers, tried everything from enhanced radar pulses to theoretical quantum entanglement scanners. Each attempt to replicate a cloud-piercing image yielded only fuzzy static or blank screens. The pressure was immense, a palpable weight in the air. One evening, hunched over a console, Anya's eyes caught a flicker of an old, forgotten document in a dusty archive file she'd pulled on a whim. It was a declassified report from the late 1950s, detailing a peculiar phenomenon observed during early satellite launches. Brief, localized atmospheric distortions that seemed to precede unusual photographic clarity in specific, high-altitude conditions. The report had been dismissed as an anomaly, likely equipment malfunction. General, I think I've found something. Anya called out, her voice raspy from lack of sleep. Volkov strode over, his usual stoicism replaced by a flicker of hope. This anomaly, what if it wasn't an anomaly at all? What if it was an early, crude manifestation of whatever the Americans are now perfecting? Volkov peered at the faded text. A long shot, Major. But at this point, we're out of easy ones. Their new approach was radical. Instead of focusing on the plane itself, they shifted their analysis to the atmospheric conditions surrounding the successful American reconnaissance missions. Weeks turned into another blur of frantic research and complex algorithms. Then, one Tuesday morning, a young meteorologist on Anya's team, barely out of the academy, shouted across the lab, "Major, the atmospheric pressure readings. There's a consistent, subtle drop, almost imperceptible, in specific high-altitude bands, precisely when the American plane was active." Anya rushed to his station, her heart pounding. The data, when overlaid with the flight paths and photographic success rates, painted a startling picture. It wasn't about seeing through clouds, not directly. It was about manipulating them. They're not penetrating the cloud cover, Anya breathed, a chilling realization dawning on her. They're briefly thinning it. Lena's discovery. Ink stained from a morning dissecting reconnaissance reports, Lena's fingers trembled as she scrutinized the grainy monochrome print. It was one among dozens captured during the latest U-2 overflight of the Soviet Union. Yet this particular frame held a peculiar weight. Weeks she'd spent cataloging troop movements, missile silos, and airfields. This image, however, labeled Sector Gamma 7, defied easy classification. Through what reconnaissance data insisted was an impenetrable layer of stratus clouds, a distinct pattern emerged on the ground below. Not a pristine view, certainly, but a discernible mesh of intersecting lines and circular structures, evocative of a colossal, skeletal framework. "Anything interesting, Lena?" Dr. Eris Thorne's low rumble cut through her intense focus from across the room. He was hunched over a different stack of photos, his brow furrowed in familiar contemplation. Thorne, with his perpetually disheveled hair and a mind like a steel trap, was Lena's trusted mentor, the only one privy to her nascent, radical theories. She slid the photograph across the desk, her pulse quickening. "Take a look at this, Eris. Gamma 7. Do you see it?" He picked it up, his thick-rimmed spectacles glinting under the harsh fluorescent light. His gaze sharpened, meticulously tracing the faint contours veiled by the cloud cover. A prolonged silence settled between them, broken only by the hum of the air conditioning. Finally, he straightened, an unreadable flicker in his eyes. "It's anomalous. Too symmetrical for natural topography. Too organized for a random ground anomaly." "Exactly," Lena breathed, a wave of relief washing over her. And the cloud cover was reported as dense. Heavy. No breaks. How could the camera possibly resolve this? She tapped a precise point on the print. "It's like it's piercing the clouds, Eris. Not merely photographing around them." Thorne moved to the sprawling wall map, a tapestry of Soviet territory punctuated by countless red and blue pins. He located Sector Gamma 7, a relatively barren expanse in the eastern Urals. No known installations of significance here. No major cities, no large military bases. Just emptiness. He turned back to Lena, a new intensity etching his expression. But if this is truly something, and if our camera somehow saw through that atmospheric veil, this changes everything, Lena. Our understanding of their capabilities and our own limitations. A shiver traced Lena's spine, a potent cocktail of excitement and apprehension. I think we need to isolate this particular camera, Eris, and the film stock. There has to be a physical explanation. Thorne nodded slowly, his fingers still clutching the perplexing photograph. Indeed, we need to trace this back to its source, and we need to be exceedingly discreet about it. The implications of such a discovery, if validated, were staggering. It wasn't merely a new installation. It signaled a novel way of perceiving, a technological leap capable of rewriting the very rules of the Cold War. The immense weight of that potential secret settled heavily in the laboratory's charged air. The scientific breakthrough. The hum of the ion thruster in the clean room was a low, resonant thrum that vibrated through Dr. Eris Thorne's chest. He adjusted his safety glasses, the fluorescent lights reflecting off their surface as he peered into the vacuum chamber. Inside, a minuscule crystal lattice, no larger than a grain of sand, shimmered with an unusual internal light. Beside him, Anya Petrova scribbled furiously on a digital tablet, her brow furrowed in concentration. The spectral analysis is showing a complete phase shift, Anya murmured, her voice barely audible above the machinery. It's absorbing the terahertz radiation and re-emitting it at a frequency that shouldn't be possible with this material. Eris felt a surge of adrenaline, cold and exhilarating. Run it again, Anya. Triple verification. I want to see if the energy signature is stable under increased flux. He gestured to the console. She nodded, her fingers flying across the controls. The thruster's hum deepened, and a low, almost imperceptible whine joined it. On the large monitor dominating the wall, a complex waveform pulsed, the green line tracing an impossible trajectory. The crystal inside the chamber brightened, a tiny internal sun. Stability maintained, Anya announced, her voice tinged with awe. The re-emitted signal is coherent, even amplified. It's passing through the lead shielding like it's not even there. Eris leaned closer to the chamber, his breath fogging the viewport. This wasn't just signal penetration. This was a fundamental manipulation of electromagnetic waves. A true breakthrough. What about resolution? He asked, his voice tight with controlled excitement. Can we reconstruct an image? Anya bit her lip, her eyes glued to the data streams. The theoretical models suggest incredible fidelity. We're talking about resolutions that defy conventional optics, especially through dense mediums. She paused, then slowly looked up at Eris, her dark eyes wide. It's like seeing through a wall, Eris, or a cloud, or anything. A small, triumphant smile touched Eris's lips. This was it. The culmination of years of tireless work. The answer to the intelligence community's most baffling problem. How to see through the impenetrable veil of atmospheric conditions. He pictured the reconnaissance images that had stumped the KGB, the phantom clarity of details through thick cloud cover. This was how. This was the device that had been in the spy plane. Let's try a live target, Eris said, his voice firm, already planning the next steps. Something more complex than a test pattern. The old B-29 model in storage. Set up the sensor array to reconstruct its internal structure. Anya's smile mirrored his own, a shared understanding of the magnitude of their discovery. The air in the lab crackled with unspoken potential, a silent promise of the world-altering capabilities they had just unlocked. The implications were staggering, both for national security and for the very limits of human perception. This wasn't just science, it was a revolution. The race begins. The roar of the crowd was a physical force, vibrating through the metal stands and up into Elias's teeth. Below, the tarmac shimmered in the midday sun, a vast canvas for the spectacle about to unfold. He gripped the binoculars, the cold metal a stark contrast to the sweat beading on his palms. Next to him, Anya leaned forward, her red scarf a vibrant streak against the muted gray of the observation deck. "They're bringing her out," she murmured, her voice barely audible above the din. Indeed, a sleek, silver aircraft was being towed into position, its wingspan immense, dwarfing the ground crew scurrying around it. The State Route 71 Blackbird. Its design was a study in predatory grace, a silent hunter carved from the very air it would dominate. Elias felt a familiar surge of adrenaline, a blend of awe and apprehension. This wasn't just another flight. This was the inaugural test flight of Project Nightingale's new optical array, the culmination of years of clandestine development. The fate of their entire operation, and potentially the Cold War itself, hinged on those experimental lenses. A voice crackled over the PA system, thick with official gravitas, announcing the pilot and co-pilot. Elias didn't need to hear it. He knew Captain Miller, a man of ice-cold nerves and steel trap instincts, would be at the controls. Miller was a legend, but even legends could be fallible. "They're sealing the canopy," Anya observed, her fingers drumming a nervous rhythm on the railing. Her gaze was fixed on the cockpit, where Miller's helmeted head was just visible. The ground crew scattered, replaced by a contingent of high-ranking officials in crisp uniforms, their faces a mix of anticipation and thinly veiled anxiety. Elias scanned the crowd, searching for any telltale signs of unusual activity, a misplaced glance, a hurried whisper. The KGB had been unusually quiet lately, a silence that frayed his nerves more than any direct threat. He remembered the cryptic reports of anomalies in their satellite imagery, vague distortions that hinted at something far beyond conventional jamming. Then, the engines ignited. A low growl escalated into a deafening shriek, the air around the aircraft rippling with heat. The Blackbird vibrated, a living thing straining at an invisible leash. Elias felt the sound deep in his chest, a primal thrum. "Here we go," Anya breathed, her voice a mixture of excitement and dread. The Blackbird began to roll, slowly at first, then picking up speed with terrifying acceleration. The silver fuselage blurred, a streak against the stark white of the runway. The ground crew, now a safe distance away, watched with bated breath. The jet lifted, a magnificent beast defying gravity, climbing steeply into the azure sky. Elias lowered the binoculars, his heart pounding. The race had truly begun. He had a chilling premonition that the real challenge lay not in the flight itself, but in what it would reveal. A world without secrets. The hum inside the shielded room was a constant, low thrum against Elias's ears, a white noise designed to mask anything from slipping in or out. He watched Dr. Eris Thorne, a man whose normally meticulous hair was now a wild nest, pace before the holographic display. The images shimmering in the air were undeniably real. Detailed, color-accurate photographs of Soviet missile silos, their individual launch mechanisms starkly visible, taken not through a break in the clouds, but through them. "Impossible," Thorne muttered, running a hand over his face. "Optics can't do this. Not with the current atmospheric scattering models. It's like the clouds weren't even there." Elias leaned forward, the chill of the metal table seeping through his jumpsuit. The flight data confirmed heavy overcast. "We had a squadron of MiGs scrambling, but they never saw a thing. Our pilot, Miller, said it was a pea souper up there." He paused, remembering the pilot's bewildered debriefing. He thought the camera malfunctioned, just took blank frames. On the display, Eris zoomed in on a particular silo hatch. The grainy texture of its reinforced steel was clear. Even the faint scorch marks from a previous test firing were discernible. "This isn't just improved resolution, Elias. This is seeing through the veil." He gestured to a small, almost insignificant device attached to the underside of the plane's wing in a schematic. The Kronos array. Miller's flight was its first real-world test, wasn't it? A knot tightened in Elias's stomach. The Kronos was a pet project, a speculative venture into manipulating localized space-time for observation, far removed from conventional optics. It was supposed to measure gravitational anomalies, Eris. Not this. He felt a cold dread creeping in. If this technology could truly pierce through anything, even atmospheric interference, what else could it see? What if it fell into the wrong hands? Suddenly, a red warning light flashed on the console. A frantic beep echoed through the room. Eris's eyes widened, his usual scientific detachment replaced by a flicker of panic. Someone's trying to access the Kronos' data stream. A remote connection. Elias was on his feet in an instant, adrenaline flooding his system. Who? How? Eris's fingers flew across the keyboard, his brow furrowed in concentration. It's encrypted, but the attack vectors, they're sophisticated. Not standard state actor stuff. It's almost improvisational. Like someone just stumbled upon a back door. The warning light intensified, bathing their faces in an ominous glow. They're in. They're downloading the raw imaging data. Cut it off, Elias roared, his hand instinctively going to the sidearm he wasn't wearing. I'm trying. Eris slammed his fist on the console. But they're too fast. And they're not just taking the photos. They're trying to replicate the Kronos' operational parameters. If they understand how it works, his voice trailed off, the implications hanging heavy in the air. The screen flickered one last time, displaying a brief, distorted image before going dark. It was a close-up of the Kronos array, taken from an impossible angle, followed by a series of unknown symbols. Then, silence. The hum of the room returned, but it felt different now, heavy with the weight of a secret unleashed.